My first ever video on this channel over 5.5 years ago was about the Nintendo Switch, and I made some really bold assumptions, many of which were pretty wrong, along with a very surface level review that I kind of wanted to revisit. So here we are, 5 years, 8,000 subscribers and almost 1.5 million views later, and even if my Switch has seen better days, I think Nintendo has finally taken the Switch in a good direction. While my heart wants to tell me the Switch came out just last year, my brain knows it's approaching 6 years old. And I want to take a look back, kind of in a retrospective-ish, I don't know, it's 2 a.m. I want to start out with the Switch itself, since the Switch is still one of the best budget gaming devices out there right now, next to the Steam Deck and my Jank Station. As you can see, mine has seen better days. I actually don't even use it much out of the house. It has mostly stayed in storage, but the screen has gotten a decent amount of scratches and the body has some marks and scratches on it too. And there's also wear on my Joy-Cons around where the buttons get pressed. And yes, my Joy-Cons did start drifting. I had to get some joysticks online, take the Joy-Cons apart, entirely replace the joysticks so that they would stop drifting. It's actually not that hard, especially if you have something like an iFixit toolkit, which isn't sponsored, but iFixit, hit me up. I'm lonely. All I got is a screwdriver. Anyways, once you actually get the back shell off, it's just a matter of getting actually down to the joystick itself and replacing it. Honestly, it's pretty simple. Normally something this small nowadays is held together with glue and pure corporate greed, but Nintendo actually surprisingly made it pretty easy to take these apart. So even if they didn't admit the Joy-Cons drift, at least they made it easy for us to fix their mistakes. Yay. My battery life also sucks on my Switch now. I would replace the battery, but I had a screw strip a few years back. I don't want to talk about it. My Joy-Cons also have gotten kind of loose over the years with how they attach to the side of the Switch. It just doesn't quite feel as good as the day I got them. So in terms of physical hardware, it's holding up mostly okay. Not exactly what I would like, but it works. One great thing about the Switch though is you can actually repair them beyond just fixing the drift. Mine, being as old as it is, I got mine on the launch day with many mistakes and gamer grease etched into it. I decided it's time for a new shell so I can finally start using it again without just feeling like garbage. So first I'd take all of the back screws out along with a screw under the stand, 2 on top and 2 on each rail, and attempt to drill out my stripped screw. In the process of drilling it out, I drilled the plastic away from the sides where the screw actually mounts the plate to the back of the Switch. So I managed to get the back off. I tried to actually get the screw itself out. I tried to cut a slit for a flathead screwdriver, but I didn't have proper tools for it. So I just took my vice grips and unscrewed it that way. And hey, now we're in the Switch. That could have been really easy, but I had to make it as difficult as possible. From here, you can easily replace your micro SD card reader if you feel like it, or just take this back plate off and actually be in the Switch. From here, you can easily replace your fan, thermal paste, or battery. I'm not going to be replacing my battery today though, or fan, even though they both probably could be freshened up, but I am going to replace my entire shell with a nice yellow one I got for like 30 bucks. Nice. Also, Joy-Con shells too, to fix the wear on the buttons, because those kind of bug me too. Pretty fantastic repairability considering it's Nintendo and they released the 3DS. Yeah, you need to try a wing screwdriver, but with that and a regular Phillips head, you can pretty much fix anything you would reasonably need to that could go wrong. Just be careful because the screws are basically made out of stale bread, so be warned. Unfortunately, you can't actually upgrade anything while you're in there. The 720p screen is starting to really get pretty dated, even at this size. I would really like something with a few more pixels, ideally 1080p, but honestly, at this point, I would take 900p. The screen also has just some giant bezels that aren't really that pleasant to look at for me. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but even back in 2017, my phone was a 1440p OLED, and the prices for small screens have just continued to drop since then and get more common. I mean, I know Nintendo doesn't know what the word competitor means outside of sites uploading ROMs of games we haven't been able to buy new for 25 years, but there are real competitors in the mobile gaming space now, like the Steam Deck or Aya Neo, or just my phone, which can honestly play N64 games better than my Switch at this point. Yeah, they all cost more, but they have way better specs, and frankly, you can actually play more games. The only thing you'd be missing out on, honestly, is first-party Switch games, which honestly, the community is already working on that. And I mean, hell, you can even play Wii U games on the Steam Deck, cutting out half of the Switch's entire library. Not to mention GameCube, N64, and honestly, anything older and any games that are supported on Windows that the Steam Deck can run, which is a lot. I know Nintendo lives in a vacuum, but they must see that other companies exist and their hardware has gone from good enough to just flat out behind everyone else at this point. And I guess while I'm talking about hardware, I should mention the Switch OLED. I actually used one quite a while ago to play Mario Odyssey, and the colors are absolutely beautiful. Not quite to the point where I would spend the $350 or so to get an OLED model, but damn are they pretty, and even come with a slightly bigger screen. No resolution bump though, unfortunately. In my opinion, it is 100% worth the price if you don't already have a Switch, but if you already have a Switch, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Either way, maybe it's time for a newer Switch, or maybe, honestly, Nintendo should just keep focusing on what works, making games, and just ignore the hardware, because honestly, it doesn't really seem like anyone complains too much about how Switch games look. Which, while I'm talking about games, I'm pretty surprised with the Switch having almost endless third-party support if you actually happen to want to buy a game you've already beat on another console, so you can tell yourself you'll for sure play it on the bus you never take to the school you stopped going to back in 2017. And finally, Nintendo, we can actually play older games for just a monthly fee, because Nintendo doesn't want us to own anything like the rest of the major companies in the world. But we can actually finally play Game Boy, GBA, GBC, SNES, NES, N64, and also purchase cloud save data, because thanks, Nintendo. It only took literally almost like 6 years to do these things I thought was going to be within a few months of release. You just have to pay more for the Game Boy Advance and N64 games. Plus, some of the N64 games are still broken. Thanks, Nintendo. Yeah, it's only about $4 a month, but the thing is you don't get to keep the games. And frankly, emulating N64 games may actually provide you with the better experience than playing it on the Switch, even if it's not as portable. And weirdly, a lot of first-party games this generation have been passing me by like crazy. There's been some seriously good first-party games though. From Animal Crossing to Breath of the Wild, Honda Odyssey, 50 Pokemon games dozens of us won't play because something Game Freak, Luigi's Mansion, 50 Wii U games, but no one played those, so it's fair game to me. The ones that stand out the most to me are obviously Breath of the Wild and Odyssey, but there's been some really solid games from other franchises like Luigi's Mansion, Metroid Dread, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and of course, the really charming Link's Awakening remake that I still haven't played because I kind of prefer the original reason for some odd reason. I think it's the music. But hey, I bought the remake, so at least I'm supporting our red overlords. No, not those. Metroid Dread especially stands out to me since the past few Metroid games have been less than subpar somehow. But Dread has really revitalized the series and introduced some really cool mechanics that work really well with keeping the spirit of Metroid, while also freshening it up a little bit and dusting off those cobwebs. Luigi's Mansion 3 succeeded in being the second best in the series up until this point. I think it was just a little bit too colorful though, and dulled that tiny little bit of edge Nintendo let the first game have, which is a major shame since the first game was so great. And turning lights on actually did something, rather than just giving you a participation trophy. Come on. Breath of the Wild has already been talked about 1,000,001 times. There's nothing else I can add here other than it's finally starting to dip into the 30s on eBay and starting to give you a lot of bang for your buck, which is one thing Nintendo isn't known for. They're kind of like a less cutting edge, less hardware focused, less well-made Apple, so nothing like Apple, just expensive. One of my favorite things about PC gaming is if you get a $300 PC, you can easily load it up with a ton of games for just another $100. But when the Switch first came out, you got a $300 console and a handful of pretty good $60 games, which is a really big pet peeve for me when it comes to consoles, especially Nintendo consoles, because you have to buy a $300 console and then buy every game for it for $60, even remakes. I mean, I can move the resolution from 480p to 1080p for free in Dolphin, so why is Nintendo charging me $60 to do it with Skyward Sword, and then $40 to completely remaster Metroid Prime? I don't understand. Either way, even if 5-year-old games are selling brand new for $60 and Nintendo's Dreamland of Greed used is a completely different story, you can pick up a used Switch for just above $200 in pretty decent condition to start you off with. Yeah, you might need to fix up the Joy-Cons if they drift, but hey, that's a small price to pay for being a Nintendo fan. You can also just get a cheaper tablet-only Switch if you want, and buy fresh, brand new Joy-Cons for around the same price if drift is a major concern for you, and easily fix up anything that may need maintenance easily, like the fan, battery, or thermal paste. Then you can start getting into the pretty decent game deals. Yeah, Breath of the Wild is still $60 on their website, but like I said, eBay, $30, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, you can already get for $40. Sword and Shield, $30. Odyssey is even $30 to $40 too, and Luigi's Mansion is $30. I believe I actually got my copy for $20. And Animal Crossing is a little expensive, but hey, Wii U games are even cheaper. Pikmin 3 Deluxe is, well, $30 too, or, well, Super Mario Bros. U there's Bowser's Fury is Switch prices are really weird. It's not as great as the deals you'll get in a Steam summer sale, but frankly, Nintendo games have, and still are, in my opinion, some of the best, most enjoyable games out there. And I think that's reflected in their pricing. Even in the used market, they're still expensive, and I still pay the price every damn time. Whether or not I can afford it is a different story, but we're nearing 6 years on the Switch, and it's already given us some serious gaming for pretty affordable prices. Even if we can't own all the games, it's still a great deal, and we still have a ton of options for gaming on the go. And if you want, you can even mod your Switch if you want Nintendo to hunt you for sport.